The rain fell heavy on the market streets of Vera, the alien city where humans were still strangers. The stalls of merchants stood half empty, their bright banners dripping with water. Crowds moved quickly under cloaks and hoods, all rushing to leave the storm behind. In the middle of this restless scene, a man walked slowly. He was human, tall, dressed in worn traveling clothes. His boots splashed through the puddles and his eyes searched the strange symbols painted on the walls. To the crowd he was unusual, a rare traveler from Earth far away. Many stared at him with suspicion, some with fear, some with quiet curiosity, but none came close then. A cry cut through the sound of the storm. It was not loud, but it carried pain. A woman's voice. Broken, trembling, the human turned, his eyes found her. She was alien, but her form carried a beauty that even the storm could not hide. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes large and glowing faintly blue in the dim light. She wore clothes torn and thin. They clung to her soaked frame. 2 small children clung to her sides. 1 boy, 1 girl, their faces thin, their eyes hollow with hunger. Before the human could understand, she stumbled forward. She dropped to her knees in the mud at his feet, her hands pressed together, shaking. Her voice cracked as she spoke words that froze the human in shock. "Take me as your wife, human. Please, I beg you." The marketplace fell silent. The whispers began instantly. Dozens of eyes turned, some filled with anger, some with cruel amusement. Some shook their heads as if this sight proved their worst thoughts about humans. The human man stared, his breath caught. This woman, a stranger, was begging him for something that made no sense. He looked down at her. Her children looked up at him with wide, desperate eyes. The girl's lips trembled as she hid behind her mother's arm. The boy clutched her ragged dress as if letting go meant death. "Why?" he whispered. His voice was barely heard, drowned by the rain, yet the woman lifted her head, her glowing eyes filled with tears. "My husband is gone," she said. "Killed in the war, no one will take me now. No one will feed my children. We will not live to see another moon. Please, human, I will give myself to you, only save them." The word struck him harder than the storm. A widow abandoned by her people, pushed to such despair that she would beg a stranger. A human for marriage, it was unthinkable, yet here she was, shaking in the mud, her voice raw with desperation. The human's heart pounded. He felt the eyes of the crowd burning into him. He knew their thoughts. To them, he was an intruder. To them, this was a spectacle. They wanted to see what he would do. Some smirked, waiting for him to laugh and walk away. Some whispered that humans would never lower themselves to take such a woman. But when he looked again at her children, he did not see shame, he saw fear, he saw hunger. He saw 2 small lives standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting for someone to pull them back. The woman lowered her head again. Her hands gripped his boots. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was almost gone. "Do not leave us to die." The human stepped back, his mind spun. Why him? Why now? He had not come to this city for this. He had no plan, no answer. He was a traveler, moving from world to world. He had little money, little power. He was not a savior, and yet here she was, begging for something impossible. The rain grew harder. Thunder rumbled above. The crowd pressed closer, waiting. Some shouted insults, some laughed. A few cursed the woman for daring to humiliate their people before a human. The human clenched his fists, his heart ached. His breath was heavy. He wanted to help. But he knew that taking her hand would mean more than food or shelter. It would mean war with the traditions of her people. It would mean standing against all their eyes, all their voices. It would mean carrying a burden he did not understand. The woman lifted her head one last time. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. "If you leave," she whispered, "my children will not see tomorrow." The world seemed to hold its breath. The human froze. Every choice he had ever made felt smaller compared to this moment. In the storm, under the gaze of hundreds, a widow begged, children trembled, and one man stood at the edge of a decision that could change all their lives forever. And he did not know what he would do. The storm had passed, but the sound of her voice stayed in his mind. The human man could not walk away, even as the market crowd scattered and left whispers behind. The widow and her children still knelt in the mud. Shivering, silent, he finally reached down, his hand gentle, and told her to stand. She rose slowly, her body weak. Her children clung to her side, staring at him with wide eyes. Their faces carried the story of hunger, their cheeks hollow, their lips pale. The human felt something heavy in his chest. He led them away from the open street. away from the cruel stares of others. They found shelter under the broken roof of an abandoned stall. There she sat down with her children. Her thin cloak could not hide the tremble of her shoulders. The children huddled close. The boy pressed his head against her chest. The girl wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. The human watched, not knowing what to say. Finally she spoke. Her voice cracked but steady enough to carry her truth. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I was wife to a soldier. He fought for this city. For our people he never returned. They brought me his broken blade. That was all. Since then we are nothing. To them I am a burden, to them my children are mouths too many to feed." Her eyes lowered. She traced the ground with her fingers. "When a woman loses her husband, she loses her worth. No man here will marry a widow with children. They call me cursed. They call my children shadows of death." The human clenched his jaw. He could not believe what he heard. On earth he knew loss was hard, but never had he seen a society that punished the ones left behind. Lyra's eyes shimmered with tears. "I begged my husband's family for shelter. They closed their doors. I begged the temple. They turned their eyes away. The market women spit at me when I ask for scraps. My children eat roots, drink rainwater. Still I try, still. I fight to keep them alive." Her hand shook as she pulled the children closer. The boy coughed, his small body weak. The girl buried her face into her mother's chest. Her voice broke into sobs. "They are dying, human. I see it each night. I hear it in their cries, and I cannot save them alone." The human's heart pounded. He felt her pain as if it pressed into him. Her voice was not just a plea for marriage. It was a cry for survival. She had no path left, no family, no shelter, no hope. She had only this chance. "You asked me," he said quietly, "to take you as my wife, but do you not fear me? And do you not fear what others will say? I'm not one of your people." Her gaze lifted, strong despite the tears. "I fear hunger more. I fear watching my children fade into the ground while I do nothing. If I must endure whispers, if I must be shamed, let it be. I would rather be shamed and alive than honored and dead." Her words struck him. Her desperation was not weakness, it was strength. A mother's strength. She had already sacrificed everything, even her pride, even her place in her people's eyes, all for two small lives clinging to her sides. The human sat in silence. His thoughts raced. He was just a traveler. He had no wealth, no power, yet here was a woman asking not for riches, not for honor, but for survival. She asked him to carry her burden, to share her suffering. The children's eyes met his. The girl's gaze trembled with fear. Yet behind it there was a small, flickering light of hope. The boy's tiny fingers clutched his mother's hand. Refusing to let go, the human turned away, his heart heavy around them. The city moved on. Merchants shouted again. Carts rolled down the streets. Life continued as if nothing had happened. Yet in that broken stall, a woman and her children balanced on the edge of despair, waiting for a stranger's choice. Lyra bowed her head. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "If you cannot take me, then at least take them, let them live. Let them see the stars again, do not let their father's blood be wasted." The human's eyes widened. She was ready to give up even her children if it meant saving their lives. The pain in her voice was sharper than any blade. "No," he said firmly, surprising even himself. "Do not speak like that, they are yours. They belong with you." For the first time, Lyra's eyes widened in shock. She searched his face as if looking for a lie. But the human's gaze was steady. He could not imagine tearing these children away from their mother. He would not allow it. The silence stretched, broken only by the dripping rain. Finally, Lyra's tears fell freely. She bent her head low. "Then help us, human. I will follow you. I will give you everything I am, only—" "Do not let them die." The human felt the weight of her words sink into him. It was not just her life she placed in his hands. It was 3 lives. 3 fragile souls tied together. Their survival now rested on his choice. The wind blew cold, carrying the voices of the city outside. He looked once more at the widow, her children, their thin bodies pressed against her. And he knew, whatever he decided, nothing in his journey would ever be the same again. The human man led Lyra and her children through narrow streets of Vera, puddles reflecting the dim glow of lanterns hung by alien merchants. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper from the crowd like a warning. Some eyes followed them, filled with judgment, others with curiosity, but he did not look back. He only focused on the small family beside him. Lyra's children shuffled close, their tiny hands gripping her cloak. The boy's eyes were wary, darting at every stranger. The girl's lips trembled, but she tried to smile. She wanted to trust, but the world had taught her caution. They reached the humans' modest home at the edge of the city. The walls were plain, the roof patched, and the floor worn. It was not much, but it was dry, it was safe, it was a place to breathe. The human opened the door and stepped aside. "Come in," he said quietly. Lyra hesitated. Her silver blue eyes searched his face. "And are you sure? Your people, they will not approve. They will not accept me, a stranger, a widow with children." He shrugged, though his heart beat fast. "I do not live for what others think. I live for what is right." They entered the home, dripping rainwater onto the floor. The human offered blankets, dry clothes, and food. He had little, but it was enough to fill hungry stomachs. Lyra and her children ate quickly, the boy's small hands trembling as he held the warm bread. The girl's laughter, soft and fragile, rose once, a sound the human could not forget. After they ate, the human sat across from Lyra. "You asked me to take you as my wife. I need to understand. Why me?" "I am not like your people." Lyra looked down, her hands folded. "I asked because there is no one else. My world does not care for widows. My children and I are abandoned if a stranger does not help us. We will die." Her eyes lifted, fierce despite her fear. "I do not ask for love, only safety. I do not ask for wealth, only life, but if you agree, I will do everything I can to make this work." The human studied her, feeling the weight of the choice. He had traveled across stars, faced unknown dangers, yet this decision felt heavier than any battle. To accept Lyra meant defying her society, risking judgment, even hostility. To leave her meant watching a mother and her children fade into despair. He could not bear that thought. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the small lives hanging on a single decision. The wind carried whispers from those who had seen him with the widow. Some called him foolish, some called him brave, others muttered warnings, yet none knew the truth. None knew the faces of the children who depended on him. He took a deep breath. "Very well," he said finally. "I will take you in. You and your children, we will live together. I will protect you as best I can." Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. Then tears streamed down her face. She dropped to her knees again, but this time not in pleading, in gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you, human. I will not fail you. I will care for your home, your life, as if it were my own." The boy looked up at the man, his small voice trembling. You mean it? We can stay?" The human nodded. "Yes, you can stay. You are safe here." The girl wrapped her arms around Lyra's leg. "Safe? We are safe?" she whispered. "Yes," the human said, smiling gently. "Safe." Days passed in quiet, broken only by the laughter and cries of children. Lyra worked tirelessly, cleaning, preparing food. Caring for the small home, she was strong despite her grief. Her determination inspired the human. He watched her, feeling respect growing where only pity had lived before. Yet the city outside did not forget. The whispers grew louder. Some merchants refused to serve them. Some neighbors stared. Some children's parents warned their own. Lyra's status as a widow, and his as a human, became a topic of gossip. He felt the weight of it, every look, every word, a reminder that the choice he made was not simple. One evening, a group of aliens blocked the street. Their faces hard, voices sharp. "You cannot do this," one said. "This woman is not yours to claim. She belongs to her people, not a stranger from another world." The human stood tall, placing himself between them and Lyra. "She belongs to no one but herself, and she will stay where she chooses." "I will not move." A tense silence fell. The aliens muttered, anger flickering in their eyes, but they stepped back. Their power was not enough to force him. Not yet. Lyra looked at him, awe and gratitude in her eyes. "You are brave," she whispered. He shook his head. "I am not brave, I am human. I cannot leave you to suffer, to let your children starve, to let despair take you." The widow nodded, understanding. "Then we will follow you together, no matter what." The human felt the truth of her words. It was not a choice made lightly by either of them. It was a bond formed in desperation, a bond of survival and trust. That night he watched them sleep, the children curled beside their mother, safe for the first time in many moons, and he knew, whatever the future held, he had chosen a path that could never be undone. Outside, the city whispered. The rain continued to fall, but inside that small home, 3 lives clung to hope, and a human had decided to walk with them through it all. The days passed slowly, but inside the small home at the edge of Vera, something began to change. Lyra and her children, once trembling and cautious, began to relax. The boy laughed at the smallest things, splashing puddles of water across the floor. The girl twirled in circles, her silver hair catching the weak sunlight that came through the broken roof. The human watched them quietly, sitting at the table as Lyra prepared a simple meal. His heart ached with a strange warmth. He had never expected this, a family so fragile, yet so full of life, depended on him. He was not a hero, he had no plans to be, yet he could not turn away. Lyra noticed him staring and smiled. A soft, shy curve of her lips. "You should eat," she said, placing a small plate in front of him. The human shook his head. "You eat first." "I can wait," she insisted, her voice gentle but firm, as if reminding him that survival was not just his responsibility. They ate together in quiet harmony. The children chattered between bites, sharing stories of small adventures they had imagined in the marketplace. The human laughed along with them, though he did not understand every word. The feeling was clear: joy, laughter, trust. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Lyra sat across from him, her hands folded. "I cannot thank you enough," she whispered. Her glowing eyes reflected the candlelight, shimmering with both gratitude and sadness. "You need not thank me," he replied. "I do what I think is right." She looked down, her voice trembling. "You have given us more than food or shelter. You have given us hope. I do not know how to repay you, except to be faithful, to care for this home, to care for you." Her words made him pause. He felt a warmth he could not explain. It was not love, not yet, but it was something deeper. Respect, admiration, the connection of shared struggle. He nodded quietly, unsure what to say. The next morning, he helped the children with small chores, showing them how to clean the floor, how to arrange the few belongings they had. The boy listened intently. Eager to prove himself, the girl copied Lyra, practicing small smiles as the human looked on. Lyra watched them, her heart swelling. She had feared humans, had feared strangers. But this man was different. He did not seek power or wealth, he did not mock or scold. He taught, he protected, he cared. Slowly, she began to trust him, a trust she had not felt in many cycles. Over the days, the bond grew. Small gestures became their language. The human would place his hand on the children's shoulders when they felt afraid. Lyra would leave small notes for him, reminders to eat, reminders that they appreciated his efforts. The children laughed more, slept better, their fears fading. Yet outside, whispers persisted. The market people still watched, some with disgust, some with envy. Some said the human had broken sacred rules. Others whispered that Lyra was fortunate to survive. Few dared speak openly, but their eyes followed him wherever he went. One evening, while the children played with makeshift toys, Lyra asked, "Do you ever regret helping us?" The human shook his head. "No," he said. "I may have risked a lot, but I would do it again. I cannot ignore those who need help, not when they have nowhere else to turn." Her eyes softened, and she reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. A simple gesture, yet it carried trust, respect, and a quiet bond that neither words nor actions could fully explain. A few days later, the human ventured into the market to gather supplies. He returned with small gifts for the children, simple treats and colorful trinkets. Their faces lit up, laughter ringing through the small home. Lyra's smile was brighter than he had ever seen. That night they all sat together, eating in quiet contentment. Lyra told stories of her home, stories of her late husband, stories meant to teach, to comfort, and to entertain. The human listened, occasionally asking questions, genuinely interested, asking about the world she had lost, about the people who had abandoned her. For the first time, Lyra felt safe enough to share her deepest fears. The human listened without judgment, his calm presence giving her courage. The children curled closer to their mother, feeling the warmth of this new family. A family built not by tradition, not by law, but by trust, kindness, and necessity. The bond between them was no longer fragile, it was growing, strong enough to face the whispers, the stares, the judgment of the city outside. Lyra began to see him not just as a savior, but as someone who could become part of their lives, someone who could help them survive, thrive, and perhaps even find happiness again. The human felt it too, a connection that went beyond duty, beyond obligation, something that stirred in his chest, a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, he was not alone in the universe either. Outside, the city slept, the wind carrying the distant voices of aliens. The storm had passed, but inside the small home, laughter and warmth had taken its place. The widow and her children, once trembling and fearful, now began to feel safe, and the human who had chosen to help them began to feel the first threads of a bond that could last a lifetime. The small home at the edge of Vera had grown warmer in spirit, but the city outside was not so kind. Whispers followed Lyra and her children wherever they went. Eyes of strangers lingered longer than they should. Some scowled, some sneered, others muttered curses. They spoke of shame and dishonor, and the human who had dared to shelter them one afternoon, while the human returned from the marketplace with a few supplies, Lyra and the children played quietly near the doorway. Suddenly harsh voices rang out, cutting through the calm. "There they are!" shouted a man in a heavy cloak. His companions surrounded him, their faces hard, their expressions filled with anger. Lyra froze, her children pressed close to her, fear shining in their wide eyes. The human stepped forward, shielding them instinctively. "What do you want?" he asked calmly, though his heart pounded. "You are breaking the laws of Vera," one of the men said, pointing at Lyra. "A widow cannot live with a human. She is cursed, and so are these children. Leave now or face the consequences." The human's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of their stares, the weight of their threats. "They are not cursed," he said firmly. "They are alive, and they deserve safety. I will not leave them to your cruelty." The group laughed. Cruel and sharp. "You think your human strength matters here? You are an outsider, and your courage will not save you from the elder's judgment. Leave or pay the price." Lyra clutched her children closer, trembling. "Please, do not fight them," she whispered. "I cannot bear it if you are hurt." The human looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he squared his shoulders. "I will not leave, Lyra. I will protect you, even if it costs me everything." The men moved closer, brandishing weapons shaped unlike anything on earth. The human stood in front of Lyra, shielding her, shielding the children. "I do not want to fight," he said, "but I will if I must." A tense silence hung, broken only by the crackle of energy from their alien devices. The men hesitated, then one stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You dare defy us?" "I do," the human said quietly, unwavering. "I will not abandon them." Suddenly, the boy let out a small cry, the tension breaking. The girl hid her face behind her mother, shaking. Lyra looked at the human. Fear and hope mingled in her gaze. You will not let them hurt us?" she asked softly. "I promise," he replied, though inside he felt the weight of risk. This was not just about his life anymore. It was about 3 lives he had chosen to protect. The men laughed again, advancing slowly, but he did not flinch. His hands ready, his eyes steady. Then, as if sensing the danger, the city itself seemed to hold its breath. A sudden commotion in the alley distracted the attackers. Merchants shouted, shadows moved, and the human used the moment to pull Lyra and her children closer, guiding them behind the wall of his home. "You cannot hide from justice," the leader shouted, his voice echoing, but the human did not respond. He simply held his ground, his presence a shield for the family behind him. Night fell and the attackers left, but their threat lingered like a shadow. Lyra held her children close, whispering comforting words. Though her heart raced with fear, the human knelt beside them, placing his hands gently on their shoulders. "They cannot touch you now, not while I am here. I will face any danger to keep you safe." Tears fell freely from Lyra's eyes. Why do you care so much?" she whispered. "Because it is right," he said simply. "Because you and your children deserve life, not fear. You do not have to face the world alone anymore." The bond between them deepened, stronger than fear, stronger than whispers and threats. Lyra realized that he had risked everything for them, not for honor, not for reward, but because he could not turn away. Her heart swelled with gratitude, and something else, something she had never felt before, began to stir. A feeling of trust, of safety, of admiration. Days passed, and the threats did not return immediately. Yet the tension in the air was constant. The city eyes lingered longer, judgment and suspicion following them wherever they went. The human prepared for any confrontation, learning quickly the ways of this alien world, teaching Lyra and her children simple safety measures. One night, as he stood watch outside the home, Lyra approached, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "You could have left," she said softly. "Many would have, but you stayed. You fought for us without hesitation." He shook his head. "I cannot leave those who need help. especially when they have nowhere else to turn. You and your children are not alone anymore. Her eyes glimmered in the moonlight. I see it now, she said quietly. Your humanity is not just in your words, but in your actions. You risk yourself for those who cannot fight for themselves. The human felt a small, quiet warmth in his chest, something beyond duty, beyond compassion, something that connected him to Lyra and her children in ways he had not expected. Outside, the city slept, but the night was not safe. Shadows of danger lingered, yet inside that small home, 3 lives clung to hope. Protected by a stranger who had chosen to sacrifice everything for them. And in that choice, trust was born, courage was tested, and the bond between human and alien family grew stronger, ready to face whatever storms the world could throw at them. The days after the attack were quiet, yet the air was thick with unspoken tension. Lyra moved through the small home with care, preparing meals, mending clothes, and caring for the children. But she no longer moved with despair. There was a sense of calm around her now, a quiet hope that had not existed before. The human watched her as he repaired the small roof of the house. The children played nearby, laughing softly, chasing shadows that danced across the floor. The boy called out, "Look, Father, I can jump over this puddle." The human froze, caught by the word. It was small, almost casual, yet it carried a weight he had not felt before. He turned to look at Lyra. Her eyes met his. Wide and glowing faintly, she did not speak, but her expression said everything: gratitude, admiration, and something deeper, something unspoken. For weeks he had protected them, fed them, guided them, risked himself for their safety, yet something had changed between them, something more than survival, something quieter, stronger, more intimate. One evening, as the children slept, Lyra brought him a simple meal of bread and roasted roots. She placed it in front of him, hands trembling slightly. Her eyes flicked up, nervous, as if testing the air between them. "You should eat," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. He shook his head, smiling faintly. "You eat first," he said. Though he had already noticed the small, careful gestures she made, the way she adjusted his blankets, the way she made sure the children's shoes were dry. She blushed faintly, looking down. I want to help in every way I can," she said quietly. Her words lingered in the air, and he realized they carried more than gratitude. There was care, thought, and a desire to be close, to share in their small world together. He felt a strange warmth, an unfamiliar pull, something that made him pause and consider her differently. Days passed, and their interactions grew more tender. More smiles lingered between them. More quiet touches brushed the hand. More soft words passed in the evenings when the children had fallen asleep. Lyra spoke of her lost husband occasionally, of the world she had once known, and of her fears. But she spoke to him as an equal, a companion, not as a stranger, not as a master. The human listened, learning, understanding, offering advice and comfort where he could. But he also began to feel something new, a quiet admiration that grew each day. Respect transformed into attachment. Attachment transformed into a subtle, unspoken affection. One night the wind howled outside. Rattling the walls, Lyra sat near the fire, the children asleep at her side. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. "I never thought I could feel this again," she whispered. "After all I have lost, I never thought anyone could care for us like this." The human knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers. "We care for each other because it is right, because we cannot leave one another," he said softly. "It is more than duty, it is connection. It is bond formed from struggle and survival." Her lips curved into a small, tender smile. "I feel it too," she said quietly. "Even after everything, even after fear, I feel something growing. Something I never expected." Their hands touched, lingering, gentle. A quiet acknowledgement of the feelings neither had spoken aloud. A mixture of trust, respect, and slowly, the beginnings of love. The children stirred slightly, murmuring in their sleep, and Lyra pulled them closer, laughing softly. Yet her eyes never left his. It was in the small moments, the simple gestures, that the bond deepened. A smile shared, a hand held, a word of encouragement. These became threads weaving their lives together. Outside, the city still whispered, still cast shadows of doubt and judgment. But within their small home, walls patched with love and care, the human and the alien widow found a space untouched by cruelty. A space where love could grow quietly, naturally, born not from chance but from shared struggle, sacrifice, and survival. Days turned into weeks, And the human saw the change in Lyra. Her shoulders less tense, her laughter more frequent. Her eyes brighter and her touch gentler. The children thrived in the warmth of their growing family, their tiny hands clinging to their mother and to him, trusting, feeling safe, learning what it meant to belong. The human realized something profound. The bond they had forged could not be broken by whispers, by judgment, by fear. It was real. It was strong and it was alive. And in that bond, love had begun. Quietly, steadily, born from struggle, nurtured by kindness, and destined to endure whatever the world might throw at them. As he looked at Lyra and the children that night, their forms soft in the candlelight, he knew that his life had changed forever, that love, unexpected and unplanned, had found its way into their hearts, and that together they could face the future, no matter how uncertain. The sun rose slowly over the city of Vera, casting soft golden light on the streets that had once been filled with whispers and suspicion. Inside the small home at the edge of the city, Lyra stirred, her children still sleeping peacefully, their breaths slow and even, a rare moment of peace. The human sat nearby, his eyes tracing the delicate features of the widow and her children. The bond between them had grown strong over weeks of shared struggle, shared meals and shared fears. It was more than protection now, more than kindness, it was family, woven together from trust, sacrifice and love. Lyra stood, brushing her silver hair from her shoulders, and looked at him. "We have survived so much," she whispered. "And yet with you I feel hope again, I feel whole." The human nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You and your children are not alone anymore. None of you will face the world without support," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We are together now, and together we are strong." The children began to stir, their eyes blinking against the soft morning light. The boy yawned and ran into the human's arms. "Father!" he cried, his small hands gripping tightly. The girl followed, wrapping her arms around Lyra, then reaching out shyly for the human. The human laughed softly, lifting the girl into his lap. "Yes, I am here. And I will always be," he said. His voice carried reassurance, the kind that comes from a promise made and kept. Lyra joined them, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I never imagined that a stranger could become family. But here you are and here we are, safe and together." Outside, the city stirred, whispers still floating in the air, some curious, some skeptical, others still judgmental. Yet the human did not care. The small home was a world of its own, a sanctuary from fear and cruelty. Here love had taken root, unshaken by the doubts of strangers. As the days passed, the family grew closer, sharing meals, chores, and laughter. The human taught the children new skills, simple things of survival and kindness. Lyra watched with pride, her heart swelling at the sight of her children thriving, and of the man who had chosen to fight for them without hesitation. One evening, the human led Lyra outside, where the streets were quiet, lanterns glowing faintly in the dusk. "The world may never accept us," he said, "but we will build our own place, a family that stands together no matter what." Lyra looked up at him, eyes shining. "I have come to love you," she whispered. The words hung in the air, soft but firm, carrying the weight of truth and courage. The human held her hands, his gaze steady. "And I have come to care for you deeply. More than I expected, more than I could have imagined," he said. Their hands pressed together, a silent promise forming between them. The children watched, sensing the bond, their small faces reflecting curiosity and joy. "Father?" the boy asked. "Does this mean you will stay forever?" "Yes," the human said, lifting them both gently. "I will stay, not just for today, not just for safety, but for every day to come. We are family now, and nothing can break that." From that moment, their life became a rhythm of small joys and shared victories. They tended their home, learned from one another, and faced challenges as a unit. Their love was simple but profound, nurtured in the fires of hardship, strengthened by trust and mutual care. The city's judgment continued outside, but inside walls patched with care and warmth, they thrived. Lyra no longer feared whispers, and the children laughed freely, their joy echoing through the small home, a sound that spoke of hope, resilience, and belonging. One day, the human walked with Lyra and the children to the city square, not in defiance but in quiet confidence. He held Lyra's hand, her children walking close. Their heads held high for the first time. They faced the world together, unafraid, unashamed, united as a family. People stopped to stare, some whispering, some shocked, others inspired. A widow with her children, a human who had chosen them walking proudly. A family created not by law or expectation, but by courage, kindness, and love. Lyra looked up at the human, her heart full. "We have made it through the worst," she said softly. "And now together we can face anything." The human smiled. "Yes," he said, "together we can face everything and nothing will break us. We have chosen each other, and that is stronger than any fear, any judgment, any danger." As the sun set over Vera, the small home glowed with light, laughter and warmth. A widow and her children, once abandoned and broken, had found hope, protection, and love, and the human, once a stranger, had become the heart of a family that would endure. No matter the storms ahead in that small home, in that quiet corner of the world, a family had been born, not from chance, not from tradition, but from compassion, courage, and the belief that love can cross any boundary, heal any wound, and create something stronger than fear, stronger than loss, stronger than the world itself. And together they stood, 3 lives bound to one, facing the future with hearts full, knowing that they had found what few ever do: home, family, and love.